Okay, thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order, open up for the budget workshop. Public session will follow the budget workshop this evening. Mr. Napoli, I believe we want to start out with, since Chuck Corey is here and it's a nasty night out, we'd like to start out with them and get them out of here as soon as possible.
Correct. Dr. Corey, come on up, and you and your team, or you by yourself, whatever you prefer. Talk to us a little bit about Ulster BOCES and the services that you provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you about our budget for next year. As you know, it's COSER driven, so districts are able to choose the various programs at the levels that they want to choose. We were able to hold all of our prices down, just almost all. I think it's about 98, 99% of our prices at 2% or less. That's speculating, and again, we do our budget back in October, November. We set our prices so that by the middle of December, we can release it to the business officials. They do a process called initial service request, where they anticipate their participation in each one of our COSER areas, and then basically give us kind of a tentative look at where they think we'll be. The downside of that is that the contracted or final service requests have to be done by the 1st of May, which is 3 weeks before your budget vote. And so I think everybody's a little bit on the conservative side, and we certainly expect that. But like I said, we work really hard to keep our pricing down at about the 2% or less level. So, as you go through all of our COSERs, except for the ones where it's a subscription where the vendor has increased the prices by more than 2%, everything else is pretty much at the 2% level or less. Dr. Schenker and Ms. Dodd could talk specifically about any specific programs. We've had a tremendous growth in our special education program. That's one of the areas that you all participate in. We're running out of space already. We added the Anna Devine School in a couple of years ago. That's already filled, and so we are increasing those services as well as our instructional support services. Some new programs in career tech, trying to push a carpentry program back onto the docket. But I'll let Dr. Schenker talk a little bit about some of the new programs in instructional services and so on, and then Allison can talk about our capital piece.
Good evening. Thank you. I won't take too much of your time. Instructional services, our professional learning and our catalog at IS. It's been an interesting year. Teachers are tired, and so we've seen a decrease in the appetite for professional learning. But with that said, we have a lot of new initiatives that are coming in the spring, focused on literacy as a human right, looking at DEI, looking at engagement. And so that happens through the IAC table, where we meet with Kelly and the other members of the county. And we'll keep bringing good programs to you all. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? No? Thank you.
I just, following Dr. Corey and Dr. Schenker, just want to thank you all again for supporting our capital project. Because of you and the other districts in Ulster County, we're very excited to move forward. We've hit the ground running with our architect, engineer, our construction manager is on board. We had our kickoff meeting 2 weeks ago. We're out in the building. So thank you again for your students, our students. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
And we did bring on the Palumbo group, who I think has done work here in Ellenville. So they are our construction managers. They're on the, again, we've had our first kickoff meeting with the architect engineer, and they are starting to review design plans and so on. And we're on that journey of finalizing plans, sending things up to state education department, waiting several months for a response from the state education department, and then ultimately getting on to construction. we're thrilled to hear about the success of the Ellenville P-TECH program. You know, we were kind of hand-holding both each other, and I know there's been a lot of cooperative ventures between our P-TECH program and the Ellenville P-TECH program. I have to tell you, we were down in a team of us were down at the National Superintendent's Conference in Nashville this past week, and talking about P-TECH, and there's a lot of interest in P-TECH around the country. So, you know, there's 47 states that presently have P-TECHs. Some of them are on stage 1, and some of them are like us, where, believe it or not, we're in our 8th year or 9th year of P-TECH. We've already graduated 2 classes, and some of those students who have graduated are currently working in careers. 2 of them I know just bought their first homes. You know, and these are kids who, as 8th graders, were projected not to graduate high school, more than likely be dropouts. Every single one of them, high school diploma, associate's degree, gainfully employed, and now 2 homeowners. So you're going to do exactly the same thing with your kids. You're changing kids' lives. So your investment in that is a real positive thing. And it really doesn't happen without the support of the superintendent, your assistant superintendent, deputy superintendent. Everybody's got to be on board supporting those kids. And it will spill over into all your other programs. The mechanism of engagement is a real positive thing. And that's really where we've kind of moved forward with our instructional services program. You know, one of the areas that I'm most passionate about is trying to make sure that every student can read as they exit 3rd grade. That's a real kind of benchmark. And so benchmark kind of goal. Because if kids can read, the world is open to them. If they can't read, University of Michigan does a study every year. 70% of the kids who exit 3rd grade not proficient in reading will end up in special education. And so it's kind of one of those, if you pay me now or pay me later. So the money of investing kids in early literacy initiatives, which is what we're promoting at the county level, but I know you're all doing that as well with your programs here, is what money very well spent, and that's where we have to go. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions, but to echo Allison, I know I wrote all the boards a letter of thanks on behalf of the Ulster BOCES board, thanking you for your support for our capital project. It'll take a bit of time before it's finished, but when it's finished, it's going to be something very special for the kids in the county.
Thank you, Dr. Corey. Are there any questions for Dr. Corey and his team? If not, thank you very much, Dr. Corey. We appreciate seeing you.
So tonight we've got 3 departments that we're going to talk about: the elementary school, the junior, senior high school. We'll throw P-TECH in there. That's kind of 4. And then the special education department. There's only one slide in my presentation that I'm going to talk about. I've got the department managers here. They will address any questions that you might have about any line items that are in their budget, and we'll call them up in the order that you see on the slide that's presented behind me. As in the past, I'll go through the line items that there was a significant increase or decrease. I'll start off with elementary school. We haven't fully funded the field trips in elementary school, so you'll see a big increase in the elementary school. We've got consumable workbooks across all grade levels. That's for the new reading program. If we adopt the new math program next year, that will be included in that. An increase in discretionary materials and supplies and contractual materials and supplies, and that's driven by the number of teachers that we have in that building. I'll jump down to the junior, senior high school. Overall, there's an increase of about $105,000. I would like to point out that Mr. Pabon and I were talking earlier today. There's a couple of items that we've talked about that didn't make it into the budget. I will update the junior, senior budget for next year. For next week. One of those items is going to be a new kiln for the art program, some needed textbooks that need replacing, a couple of other items, but I will give you an updated high school budget or junior, senior high school budget, and then I'll outline them in my summary. We also have some increases in materials and supplies. For math, that would be calculators, band and chorus, music competitions, that wasn't fully funded across the board for 7 through 12. Materials and supplies and college tuition, that's for P-TECH. Mr. Donahue can certainly talk about all of those items if you'd like him to. We have a new department, social workers. You'll see that line item was non-existent before, but we went forth and we hired new social workers, so they need some materials and supplies. Assemblies building-wide, as well as field trips building-wide. And then we'll jump down to special education. Non-BOCES tuition, that's private schools. We've seen a decrease. We did bring some students back into the district, so we saw a decrease in that line item. Summer tuition, although we were talking earlier today, we might see some increases in that, so that number might be changing. And then BOCES special education overall has seen a significant increase, and Dr. Corey alluded to, they're running out of space. They're looking for more space for their programs. We're sending more students there. And Ms. Matarazza can certainly talk about that. So I'll bring up Ms. I. She's our elementary school principal. She can address any questions that you might have for the elementary school budget. And if you don't have any, then we'll move on to Mr. Bourbon and Mr. Donahue.
Good evening. I'd first just like to thank for all your support. I know budget items and budget season, I'm sure, is a little bit stressful, but just to thank you very much for supporting everything that we do at the elementary building. The budget really for us just increased mostly for consumables for the new reading program for moving forward for next year. Any questions?
Any questions for Mrs. I on the elementary budget? Nope. Thank you, Mrs. I.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. I would just like to echo those same sentiments. Thank you for your continual support. Thank you for also helping with the arts as well. We're looking forward to seeing more artwork and also our music department producing more musicians. So once again, thank you. I don't know if you have any other further questions regarding the budget.
Any questions for Mr. Bourbon on the high school budget that you have in front of you? Iris?
I just wanted to be clear, it's the junior, senior.
Junior,
high
senior
school,
high school, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, that was really my only question.
No other questions? Thank you, Mr. Bourbon.
Thank you.
Good evening, and just to echo what everybody else said, we just want to thank you so much for your support of the junior, senior high school, the elementary school, and specifically for my purposes here today, right now, for the P-TECH program. So I'm here, I can answer any questions.
Any questions for the P-TECH budget proposal? Mr. Donahue in general? No? Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Donahue.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again. I feel we talk, bi-monthly. So really you can see, as Vince explained, it was pretty flat in most areas, but we did see the decrease with the non-BOCES tuition. We do have a few students aging out. So we did see a decrease there. And our increase with BOCES, we have, students that number is going to change, as we've talked, in the last few weeks, just about students that we have sent out packets to. So that number is going to change too as we go through and move through our out of district intakes and as we move into annual season.
Questions on the special education budget? I see that we have some, there's always increases in the special education line. Do you see a significant savings from bringing the students back here to Allenville? Have you seen a significant savings in that?
I think that's hard to say. I mean, I would like to say yes. Because all of those students in one particular class, we would otherwise be sending out of district. So absolutely. But as we've talked about, we have a lot. This has been an ongoing discussion transferring in from, we kind of put a table together. I think we've had 28 students transfer in, and of those 10 were out of district. So yes, we have a savings there, and we would be seeing, depending on where those students were placed, potentially hundreds of thousands that would be spent there. So we like to see that we're continuing to do that as we move into next year. We're already kind of looking at other students that are in preschool now that we can move into that program and build that program as we move year to year. They're kindergartners now, most of the students in that class, I think all but one.
Any other questions for Mrs. Mazzarata? Yeah. Go ahead, John.
We talked about bringing students back and potential savings. And the question that we had to answer was, are there enough kids to fill those spots to make it worthwhile? You see going forward with that particular class that we will have enough numbers coming out of the pre-Ks and the other people that might be coming into the district?
Absolutely. Definitely.
Any other questions for special education? Not, thank you, Mrs. Matarazza.
You're very welcome. Thanks, guys.
That's all we have for budgets tonight. There will be budget presentations next week as well. I'll put up the agenda and the same documents and details that you have tonight, but for those other departments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Napoli. Any other questions for the budget for Mr. Napoli? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to reconvene the public session. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned from the budget workshop. We will now call the meeting to order for the public workshop, for the, not public workshop, sorry, public session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call for the approval of the minutes of the February 8th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Then moved. Do I have a second? Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Call for the approval of the minutes from the February 15th, 2022 budget workshop number 1.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Public forum for this evening. Call to the podium Gammy Singer to speak about the budget. Gammy? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
We have a presentation, a concern that we had for the beginning of the year, and we've been talking about it. So the Education Committee from the NAACP is here to present that concern. And I have copies for all of the school board members. Can I pass them out, President?
Yes.
Does she want to make a presentation?
Using all three people using 3 minutes each.
She understands that,
It's going to be 9 minutes.
so she could come and make a presentation. You know what I'm saying?
Emmett Singer will be presenting the concern that we have.
The Ellenville NAACP is concerned about the pre-K situation. We forward our monthly reports with our concerns to the New York State NAACP. They report to national, and the national office composes strategies and lobbies vigorously to address these most important issues. Education has always been a primary focus of the NAACP, and its voice is both important and powerful in Washington, and know that what it has accomplished in its history has benefited everyone. Everyone. every single child. Pre-K was included in the Build Back Better proposed legislation. The National NAACP supported it and is still fighting for it, as pre-K legislation garnered wide support in Congress. Our Ellenville NAAC branch is fighting for it here. We don't want pre-K to be dropped. From pre-K to third grade, children learn to read. From fourth grade on, they read to learn. That is why we have deep concerns about the efficacy of any reading program, because we know how important reading is to the success of all children. And we know it starts with pre-K. That is irrefutable. In those primary grades, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social challenges are revealed and are or should be addressed immediately as obstacles to learning. That gets our young people starting on the right track, and equitable learning begins. Waiting until grades 11 or 12 to be concerned about young people passing state exams or their futures, etc., is unacceptable. Millions of dollars will be distributed soon from New York State's funding of the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Policy. And the Ellenville NAACP wants a sizable concentration of that funding to go to grades pre-K through third grade. Know that the Ellenville NAACP appreciates the help and cooperation that we have always received from the Ellenville Central School District and Superintendent Lisa Wiles especially. But we bring this particular concern to the Ellenville School Board as it still resounds, and there is no plan for pre-K next year. When will there be a pre-K? And when will our district's report card can be something that we can be proud of? If we improve our schools, it follows that improvement will happen as night follows day in all ways in our community. The superintendent has pointed out that there's a lack of funds for pre-K, that there is no room for pre-K, and that absenteeism is an issue in pre-K. The NAACP is asking that you, the board, put pre-K on the front burner as you work through the budget, that this district finds the funds, finds the room, and finds a solution to pre-K absenteeism. All problems have a solution. You just have to find the solution and have the will to do it. Thank you for listening and for your consideration of pre-K inclusion in the budget.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Singer and the NAACP. Maud, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Superintendent, anything you want to say on this?
No, I think we all agree that pre-K is a very important initiative, and as we had discussed and we continue to discuss, we did have a pre-K program that suffered after there were cuts to our state aid, and the program had to drop its transportation from half-day, the midday transportation. And there were struggles with it. The other piece of it that we're lobbying with the state is that although they say they fund it, they don't fully fund pre-K. So there's a huge chunk of the local share that we have to look at. We're struggling this year in cutting certain areas, but I assure you that the discussions will continue, with the board with pre-K. I think everybody recognizes, and we have a lot of initiatives happening with regard to literacy. We have a new literacy program where we have new literacy initiatives. We're focusing strongly at the early grade levels, K1, 2, as Dr. Corey said earlier. It is more than most important to have our students at their actual reading level by third grade. So that is a huge goal of ours. But we'll continue to look at pre-K and see how we can roll a program out. I don't see it for the 22-23 school year, but we can surely plan to see what we can do moving forward. And we'd love to have you part of those conversations.
So again, thank you very much. Thank you for bringing that to our table for discussion. We'll move on this evening. We already went through the budget presentations. We'll move into reports and correspondence. I have nothing for this evening. Board membership? Nothing. We will move on to Superintendent Lisa Wiles.
So at the next meeting, we'll be recognizing fall sports. It was a request by the board that we have that recognition for fall sports. Winter sports is just coming to an end. Both the boys and girls basketball teams went to the playoffs. Unfortunately, over the weekend, they did not move forward, but they both had great seasons, and we'll be recognizing those students probably, in April. We continue to work through the budget process. I, just encourage you to review things. We're looking at ways to make the budget leaner, so that as we move through the process, if you see anything in your documents, bring them forward. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mr. Napoli.
Thank you. I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Deputy Superintendent Kelly White.
Yep, good evening. I just want to remind the school community that we will be hosting a superintendent's conference day on March 15th. There was a letter that was sent out today and posted on our social media regarding that there'll be no classes for students that day. And additionally, discussions have begun for our summer school plan. So we do intend on hosting in-person academic summer school for students in grades 7 through 12. And our K through 6 Boost Academy, we're looking to bring back again this summer.
I just have to ask the board if they would be amenable. Some people walked in that wanted to speak tonight at the public forum. We're through that. Is there any objection to amending the agenda to go back to the public forum so that they could be heard? Anybody? All right, we will amend the agenda to go back to the public forum. Could you bring me your name? Come on up here. Irene, I don't want to. Aspelon. Okay, we'll go up and speak it then. She will be speaking about the budget again, the mandates. Go right now. Thank you.
Where do I go?
Straight up to the public.
Good evening. My concerns, I've reviewed the reopening plan, and on page 12 is a link for the American Rescue Plan Act. Takes me to page 16, where it refers to the requirements that the school district must comply with in order to receive the funding through to June 2023, which the school has implemented. One of the requirements being that during the period of the award, the following must be maintained and reported on according to CDC guidance, which, may I point out, is not law. Please clarify for the funding requirements for myself and the community. And I have a paper here. My main concern is the masking, tracing, isolation, and quarantine. The masks don't work in the context that we're being told. And where's the biohazard containers if this is such a danger to people in the environment? Children are being harmed. They cannot be forced to wear a mask, take a test, or quarantine without a court order. It would appear to me that you're in violation of New York Penal Code 260.10. Our children are also being threatened for not complying. Wearing masks is dangerous to development. Masks do not stop the spread of virus per the CDC. There's a few more penal codes here that you may want to take a look at because you could be in jeopardy of violating the law. New York Penal Code 240.20, 120.14, and 135.60. You're following guidance per the agreement of the funding. These are not laws. Our children are suffering due to your actions. Promoting use of masks are unwarranted and illegal. This mandate is in direct conflict with Section 360 BBB, and that whole thing is down there, which requires the wearer to be informed of the option to refuse the wearing of such a device. If a doctor gives an order to a clinician and the outcome harms the patient, it isn't the doctor that is held liable. It is the one carrying out the order. In this case, those taking the guidance and recommendations. Unmask our children and give that money back. What's next? Mandating the non-FDA approved experimental shot. I'd like to know, did the school sign the CDC Crisis Response Cooperative Agreement? Because the terms and conditions of this is that the school district is to comply with orders, current and unknown in the future, 5 years into the future, to comply with whatever they tell you or lose the funding. My children are not lab rats and are not for sale. I do not consent to this. I am demanding you unmask our children immediately, give the money back, and don't take any more of this strings attached funding. You need to vote tonight to unmask our children. I believe you're working on your next year budget, which, if I'm correct, you've already agreed on per these already signed funding agreements. Stop this now. Send it back. Free our children. You're all on notice. At this time, I am looking into legal counsel to address this situation. I want to continue to believe that you have our children's best interest in mind. However, in light of these findings, I don't believe that anymore. I implore all of you to search your hearts. Look at the reason you sit in these positions. Do you really have our children's best interest at heart? The board has a big job to do, taking numerous things into account. I understand that. My job is to protect the rights and freedom of my children and those who don't feel that they have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Anybody, while we still have public forum open, want to speak? If not, yes? Go ahead, Philip.
Okay. All right. There's about 11 or 12 states that are still masking, including New York. The sign's different from other states, and it's been 2 years. So when will we say enough is enough? How long will we put our kids through this? Almost all the kids in schools basically have 100% survival rate. My daughter's telling me she can't breathe during gym class, and I know she's not the only one. Do you really think it's safe grasping for air while your nose and mouth are covered? Breathing your own bacteria-filled air all day? There are peer-reviewed studies that show that masks don't work, and it would be nice for us to hear both arguments. Doctors can't even speak out their studies against masks, and if they do, they're banned from social media, their lives and families threatened to lose their licenses, and the government calls them domestic terrorists. And also, they call their parents the same thing because they want to fight for the freedom of choice. We don't want a dictatorship. If you are funded to do this, can you think about the kids? The CDC has thrown out the PCR test. They said the PCR test cannot determine between cold, flu, or COVID as of December 31st, 2021. So for 2 years, they're telling us they have known this. So what were we what will we, so what were those positive cases really for? I know most of us watched the Super Bowl, and it took place in California. All the celebrities were partying at the Super Bowl with not one single mask on, including the governor and the mayor. Meanwhile, in California, kids have to wear masks in school. Our acting governor, New York, took a picture with her colleagues, all of them without a mask, but the kids, they were all masked. People are tired of the rules for us, but not for them mentality that these leaders show us. And the parents around this country are speaking up, and they're tired of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Younger. Thank you all for coming in and sharing your concerns with us this evening. We will go back and move
Mr.
on.
President, I have a point of information, please.
Yes.
Since we agreed to change the agenda to allow folks to speak, and since public session usually precedes board concerns, can we also have board concerns revisited as a matter of
I do not, since we did amend the agenda, I do not have a problem unless any other board member wants to object to amending to go back to board concerns. There being no objection, Mr. Burns, the floor is yours.
Okay, 2 points of information. First off is, can you tell me how much the district has taken in the funds that were spoken about in order to follow the proceedings that the CDC, the governor, and everyone else put forth on us?
I can get you a report of what the total funds were and how much we've expensed to date, but I don't have that at the tip of my fingertips.
Okay. I think that as a board concern, I'd also like to comment on the speakers that came forth. As you know, I myself have raised the question of masks and the efficacy of how they work and everything. And I commend the parents, and I'd like to see more parents come forward and express it. I think that at this point, Madam Superintendent, Mr. Board President, it is no longer acceptable for us to just tell folks that we're following the orders. I think that time has passed, and I think the board and the administration should take actions on the face mask wearing and let our kids get back to being kids and progressing through their education as they should appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. One question, Mr. Abbott. Are the funds specifically tied to the student, to the school district complying with the mask mandate?
I don't know what those rules are off the top of my head. There are certain rules and regulations that we have to follow regarding the funding. I'll have to look into that. I was making notes as the speakers were speaking tonight, but there are usually rules tied to federal funding.
Could you bring those regulations back to us?
I certainly can.
Thank you.
Point of information again. We accepted money from the federal government and from the state government without knowing what the caveats were to those.
No, we know what the caveats are. So the
Well, we
caveats,
can't get it from our business officer.
as soon as I have the opportunity to speak, I'll share my thoughts on all of this.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Napoli, you'll bring that back to us.
I will.
Thank you. Superintendent Wiles.
So we did receive quite a large sum of money, as did other school districts, for American Rescue. And as you know, there were many regulations and mandates that were put on the schools over the last 2 years with regard to mask mandates and social distancing and all different kinds of mitigation that the schools had to, put forward. That money that was sent to us was used and continues to be used to support the mandates, which in this case were funded mandates as opposed to unfunded mandates in the past. So we did purchase a lot of PPE for our schools and a lot of other things. I know Mr. Napoli keeps a full accounting of all that we can share. We also could use the resources to fund reopening plans, so to fund additional staff members, additional nurses that we needed to follow the mandates. So, as a superintendent, there are rules and mandates, and even our kids have rules and mandates that people don't agree with. But the mandates have come down from the State Education Department, the Department of Health, and the rules have been set forward. And while I might not agree with the rules and the mandates, they've been set forward. So if we're going to pick and choose some rules and mandates that we're going to follow, and then pick and choose other rules and mandates we're not going to follow, that could be problematic for our kids, and it could be problematic for us as an organization. Now, I was hoping that the governor and the state would find it in their infinite wisdom since the infection rate is coming down, that they would lift the mask mandate. And we were told today that the Department of Health, the Commissioner of the Department of Health, extended from February 21st through April 22nd the mandate for schools. But now let me say this to you. There was also a large caveat in the statement that came out to us that it doesn't mean that they don't and they can't shorten that. So my organization, the New York State Council of Superintendents, has been advocating and requesting that the state give us metrics. So if they're going to keep a mask mandate in place, when does a mask mandate get lifted? I think they owe us information, and I think they owe us an explanation on when that's going to happen. So, you know, these are unprecedented times, and I can't advocate for breaking the rules for things that I don't necessarily agree with. I don't advocate that kids do that. If there's going to be a mandate that our teachers and staff members have to wear masks in the building, and that's what we're being held accountable on, then I have a hard time saying that we're just, you know, everyone, let's break the rules. We're not going to follow the rules. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. You know, we have from the beginning of this pandemic, with all the unknowns, followed the guidance, whether we liked it or not. And we don't really know what what's what. This is a pandemic. We're in the early stages of it, maybe the late stages, 2 years in. You go back and you look at the research from the 1918 pandemic, it was 3 to 5 years. People died. People disagree on a lot of things. We have to disagree. We have to agree to disagree respectfully. We're following the rules. That's the guidance we've gotten from the state. The superintendents are not thrilled with it. We want our kids to be unmasked. We want there to be a sense of normalcy here. But we're going to follow the rules that they give us. And I'm sorry about that. If the board wants to direct us not to follow the rules and to move forward, you know, so be it. But, you know, this is a very hot emotional issue. We get it. And, you know, we're moving forward and we're advocating, like people advocate to get things changed respectfully and sometimes loudly. And I would tell you, if you feel this strongly, I hope you're contacting your assemblymen, your state senators, the governor's office, because they're the commissioner of the Department of Health. They're the people that have the ability to change this respectfully and legally. And that's what needs to happen. And I'll say this, and I'll say it with passion. When they cut our state aid 10 years ago, and they removed $4 million from our budget, and we had to cut staff that directly hurt our kids. NAACP here tonight's talking about pre-K. Reinstate the program. It's very important, and I agree with that. But your voices need to be heard in Albany, okay? That's where your voices should be. There should be no relenting on our local legislators about this. This board has to follow the mandates and the rules. Our voices, when we got together, correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Bruce, and we said we wanted more funding. It took a few years, but we got our foundation formula reinstated now. So there are ways to go forward. And if we feel that passionate or you feel that passionate about it, we have to go to the door where the power is to change this. And that's with the governor, and that's with the assemblymen and the politicians. That's where it is. They have to hear the voices of the people. I'm doing it through my organization. You want to change this? Send faxes to the governor's office and say change it. But let's remember, for all of us that want these masks off, there are people that still want the masks on. So let them wear it if they want to wear it. But let me just say this, let your voices be heard in Albany at the governor's house, because that's where the decisions are being made. I'm sorry, I'm a little passionate about it, but we talk about it all the time. Vote, have your voice heard. That has to be what happens here.
History dictates that things change and rules change and laws change when we peacefully protest to those that are accountable to the masses and to the people. Voting changes things. You have a voice, and the voice needs to be heard, and I agree with the superintendent. The voice needs to be heard to the Commissioner of New York State Public Health, to the Commissioner of Education, most importantly, to your legislatures, your state senators, and to the governor of the state, Kathy Hochul. Until we the people as a whole go and petition, and there's two sides to this, like every other issue. There are two sides, very emotionally charged issue this is. This is not clear cut. I don't want anybody to think that this is a clear cut area where we could just say mask versus no mask. It's emotionally charged across the aisle. There's people that are in favor of it, and there's people that are against it. If we are going to change it, it has to be done through petition, through peaceful protest, and it has to be done at the doorstep of our legislatures and our governor. We follow the mandates that are put upon us. Whether right, wrong, or indifferent, the Commissioner of Education has threatened that if we did not follow this, we would be violating our oaths of office and could be subject to removal from office. And that was put in writing to us. So if we want to change things, and you want to change things, then go to the people who have the power to change it. I will tell you that just today, a ruling came out from the New York State Commissioner of Health extending the mask mandate in schools until April 22nd. That was delivered to us this afternoon, and it has been put into the public, issued by the New York State Commissioner of Health. If you want to change it, that's where your voice needs to go. We appreciate it. We certainly empathize with it, but we are powerless to change anything other than the governor and the commissioners. So please, if you want to change things, I beg you to go and petition those who have the power to change it. Thank you.
Point of privilege.
We're still on board concerns. Is this a concern, Mr. Burns, or continuing with the conversation?
It's a point of privilege.
Go ahead.
You know, when you sit there and you say that we're helpless, I think it violates the oath that we did take to do what's in the very best interest of our kids. Every time this board has faced an issue, we've dealt with it head on, we've discussed it, and we've moved forward. You keep saying we're helpless to do anything about it, and that's why the bullies keep bullying us by threatening us with our funding for our kids is the most immoral thing that I could think the governor could do, and the state ed commissioner, threatening us with funding for our kids to follow their illegal mandates. And I think that we should get an input from the lawyer on the sections of law that were quoted to us today that we might be violating. And I think that parents should continue to come forward and speak their mind on this. It's a very simple solution, Mr. Board President. If people want to wear masks, they can wear masks. If they don't want to wear masks, they don't want to wear masks. But we're letting our children down. Every time we say, sorry, our hands are tied, and sending it to the governor and sending people that come to this board to speak about our kids to go to the governor. You and I both know damn well Governor Hochul don't give a damn about our kids. She's more interested in getting elected than she is about our kids. And we are the ones that have taken an oath to be responsible for our kids. And if we sit here and don't do anything to move forward to get back to normal, then we're violating our oaths.
Geneva.
Same sentiments as John. I definitely agree with a lot of what you were saying. As soon as you said that we're powerless in the situation, I don't think, especially being elected into this position and, you know, being the newest person on this board, so very recently feeling the weight and the responsibility of this position, it's definitely not a powerless position. And I would say that though I agree that a lot of the decision-making is done at a higher level than us, there is strength in numbers. We're not powerless in our role. We can talk to other boards. We can advocate on other level. Lisa can, talk to other superintendents, and we can listen to our community. If this is something that they want, if even as a board, it seems like we have a general consensus. I'm not going to speak for everyone. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but it does seem like we want to hear what the community is saying, and these 9 opinions don't make up the entire community. So if our community as a whole is advocating for changes in the mask mandates, it is well within our power and within our right and our responsibility to advocate for what the community is telling us, to work together within our power. So we're, just going off of, we're not powerless. We absolutely can talk to other superintendents. We can talk to other boards. We can get together. There are things that we can do that might not be exactly what the parents are asking for right now. There are things that we can do to work toward what they're asking for. And so
The term powerless, while I used it, in a sense is when I talk about powerless, I talk about there's nothing we can do here at this level to change the law. The law has to be changed by the governor, the mandate rather has to be changed by the governor and the Commissioner of Health and Education. We, as a school board, no matter what we vote, how we vote, it will not, at the end of the day, change what the mandate is. While I agree with you, we can petition, we can be heard. The powerless comment is in reference to the fact that no matter how we act or how we vote or how many motions you want to make, we are not the end authority on this. The governor is, and the Commissioner of Health and Education. That's what I mean when I say that we are powerless.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to clarify, I think it's not that we're powerless, it's just that we don't have the authority that we want in this particular situation, and so need to be creative in using the power that we do have in order to make the change that they're asking for. And I'm just saying that to say, I think that, you know, sitting on the board and talking to the community, we all want the same things. We all want to advocate for what we want in this community, and it's just sometimes, you know, like our hands are tied in certain areas in certain situations, and so that doesn't mean that, like you said, we're not powerless. It's just
We just don't have the authority.
We are doing what we can and finding and appreciate you bringing to our attention so that we can find other creative ways to advocate for what they're asking for.
If any one of the board members wants to make a motion, they can do that. And we could take a vote on it. At the end of the day, no matter which way we go, it's like you said, we don't have the authority, but we can do it. But there are creative ways, and there are ways, and I agree with you fully, that we can peacefully protest and petition our legislatures, our senators, the governor, the Commissioner of Education, Commissioner of Health. And we could be heard, and we appreciate, like I said, this whole thing is an emotionally charged issue. It goes across both sides of the aisle. You may get an audience in here that's totally in favor of keeping the masks on.
Or fully remote.
Or fully remote. This is just an emotionally charged issue. And Mr. Burns, I respect his opinion on it, and I certainly think that we can petition, we can do whatever. That's the board's prerogative. There's 9 people here. I'm just one person, and I'm just voicing my opinion that at the end of the day, it's the governor who has the authority, and it's the Commissioner of Education and Health that has the authority.
I'm confused by your comments, Mr. President, because last meeting, you told me we couldn't do anything about it. You did mention the word powerless today, and now you're saying we can petition. I suggested petitioning the governor to stop this weeks ago, and we couldn't do anything.
You can, if you as a board member want to make a motion, Mr. Burns, feel free. Make it until the end of the meeting. But in any way you want to go, you can make it. My comments in reference to how you want to take that and how you want to go forward with it, when I tell you that we couldn't do anything about it, it's because the mandate will not change by us voting one way or another. At the end of the day, Mr. Burns, the mandate is going to stand until the governor.
You don't have to
Commissioner of
raise your voice,
Education,
Mr. President. I can hear you.
and the Commissioner of Health. I'm just voicing my opinion like you do, Mr. Burns.
Very nice.
So I do,
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I was elected to the school board of Ellenville to look out for the education of our children. That is what we were elected to do, which made me a part of one branch of a piece of government. It also made me subject to what that government says I'm supposed to do. Excuse me if I speak in military terms, but that's the way I believe. 22 years to do that to you. I was always taught, the orders come down, you do what you're told to do. You follow your orders. Once you followed your orders, you can complain to whoever you need to complain to. But your mission is first. We have done what we needed to do to try to keep our school open, to try to keep the monies that we have flowing, and to make sure that every child in our school, every teacher, every janitor, every worker in our school was safe. That's what we were put here to do. When the orders come down that you need to wear a mask to do it, we don't like it. fine, when we get through doing what we're supposed to do, we can file a protest. We can write a letter, we can file a protest. That's within our parameters. But while I'm writing that protest, I still do what I'm asked to do so that I can continue to do what it is I was placed here to do. Prayerfully, if I have filed that protest, and enough of us have filed enough protests, somebody above will see that the order is asinine and do what we requested them to do or change it to where it fits better. But our job right now is to make sure that we are doing our best to make sure that our children are educated the best we can give them. If it requires wearing a mask, then fine. Every once in a while, I give them a break and let them take it off. But the charge is that the man says that I will take your money. I can give it back. Yes, we're already digging out of a hole. We already cannot find teachers. We already are dealing with things that are affecting how many of our children we can educate. This thing, we didn't make any of these rules, but we were charged to follow rules. So when it comes down, we follow the rules, we file our protests, and we encourage those around us to file protests too, so that the people above find out that there's more than one person upset with the things that they've asked us to do. But until they change their mind, we continue to follow the rules as we're given so that we don't lose anything. If anything, we gain so that we can educate our children, period. Anything other than that is dereliction of my duties.
Well said, Mr. Collins.
And Julius, with all due respect, the follow the orders blindly did not work out for Lieutenant Cowley in Vietnam, if you remember, who was ordered to go in and destroy a Vietnamese village, tear it down, kill everybody in the village. He followed the orders, and then the United States government brought him up on charges, and he did time. Because it's not just to follow the orders, it's to follow your conscience as well.
Your
And to send- and let
your
me
conscience
finish.
is one thing.
That's true.
Unless you're given an order that causes somebody damage, causes you damage.
You don't believe we're
follow that
damaging our
order
kids?
and you do what you're supposed
You
to
don't
do.
believe we're damaging our kids?
No, I do not. I've got kids in this school too. They go to this school, they wear their mask,
You think dissent
and
is
they
the
follow
highest
the
form of
rules.
patriotism, and if those of us that believe that we should be protesting should be protesting.
Yes, so I'm supposed to tell them to take theirs off so that when they get sick, everybody else can get sick around them? No.
That's why I think we go to, if you want
Gentlemen,
to wear a
the,
mask, wear a mask. If
the
you don't,
chair
you
has
don't.
not recognized you. You will, raise your
me,
hand to be
I'm
recognized
sorry.
by the chair,
I'm
and the
tired.
discussion should be one at a time. We've heard both sides of this tonight. We've had a passionate debate on this thing, and we will continue to monitor it and follow it, and get our voices heard. Do it, as Geneva said, we got ways to do it, creative ways, and let's be heard. And I would ask you to do that. The NAACP brought us, while we're still here in the board concerns, the NAACP brought us a proposal, or not a proposal, but a discussion for pre-K. And since we had this spirited discussion on mass, I think that they came here and took some time to put their presentation together and discuss with the board. Is there any board member, while we're on board concerns, that'd like to talk about the pre-K program here in Ellenville?
I think it's,
Mr. Collins.
this is something that we started. I believe it's something that we've been trying, we want to keep. We've been trying to keep. The problem is that the funding to keep it going and keep the rest of the school going, they just didn't balance. I believe that as we go along, we're working to try to figure out how we can balance it all out and keep it done. It's not something that any of us want to pass up or forget.
Thank you. I also agree about the pre-K program. As we know, education has to start at a very early level, the earliest possible level that we can in order for it to be effective. The reading program, teaching reading and math and skills such as that, it starts at the earliest possible age. So I agree with you. I think that we'll continue to look at it, superintendent, and while we do our budget discussions, hopefully there's something that we can find and go forward with it next year. Thank you. Jody?
Can we also look into possibly looking for a grant for pre-K? I know they do fund part of it. Maybe we can fund the other part by a grant, at least for a few years. I think it's a key program that we should be offering our community.
Thank you very much. Lisa Ramirez?
So where has it gone? We've had it, and then was there just not enough interest?
So we
kids
had
having trouble getting it?
So going back probably over 10 years ago, we had a pre-K program. At that time, the funding was more robust, let's say. So they funded, we funded 2 teachers. There was required to have a TA. The class sizes at the time were 15 students. So we had an AM program and a PM program, and we funded the transportation for the midday run. So the students would come in the morning, and then they'd go home in the, midday, and then the midday run would pick the students up to come in, and then they'd go home on the regular runs. When the funding started to be cut, and we were really pressed during from 2008 to 2012, we laid off a lot of staff, and programs were cut. We cut the grant money that was referred to was never enough to cover the whole program, right? So I have an issue with how it's presented by the state, that there's all this funding, but no district in Ulster County has enough funding to run a bona fide, fully funded pre-K program. So when we cut the midday run, the enrollment went down significantly. And from that point forward, we couldn't really fund full classes because it was a hardship for the parents to get their students here midday and then to get them home, for that transition. So since then, we get I think it's about $186,000 in pre-K, which we can look at the number. I don't think it's been increased for the allocation. And that doesn't even fund the teachers and the TAs. We had 2 classrooms. We ran it for 60 students. It was a short waiting list, but that seemed to be, for half-day programs, that seemed to be, at the breaking point. A lot of families wouldn't pull their students out of full-day daycare, full-day nursery school, or full-day preschool programs for a half-day school-related program. And there was just never enough funding to cover. You think about a kindergarten class, that's 5 teachers, and it's not just 5 teachers, it would be the TAs. And when you build a schedule for that, they have to have specials, because it's a full day, they have to have lunch. So it became very cost prohibitive. So I have strongly disagreed with the state saying that it's fully funded, because it's not fully funded. And any of the superintendents in Ulster County that have gotten funding for this have had the argument with their legislators that it's not fully funded. And when we have all these other mandates that come down, and we've talked about this, finally the foundation formula is running. But we'll put together the numbers to show you how much a full day pre-K, it's like replicating kindergarten again, right? So 5 teachers, our class sizes have been coming down, TAs for every classroom. And I'm not making excuses why we can't do it. There's other creative ways. We can accept the money. If there's local pre-K programs that meet the criteria, we can share the funding with them. So there's different things we can do. So I'm not being negative saying, no, I want a pre-K program. There's no question about that. But it has to be, we have to have a program that's authentic, that is focused on literacy, and that meets the needs of our kids coming in. So it's something that we will definitely open up. We'll have the discussions with Mrs. I, Ms. Matarazza, Mrs. White again, and see how we can brainstorm doing this again. We're not close to it, but we'll have to find another source of funding to supplement what they give us.
Thank you. Moving on to the personnel resolutions for this evening. 6.1, upon the recommendation of superintendent of schools, be it resolved that the appointment of Aisha Dunn, teacher aide, be made permanent following a successful probationary period of 6 months, effective February 28, 2022.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Upon the recommendation of superintendent of schools, be it resolved that the appointment of Ashley Bush, teacher aide, be made permanent following successful probationary period of 6 months, effective February 28th, 2022.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carried. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved the appointment of Kayla Gonzalez, teacher aide, be made permanent following successful probationary period,
So
6
moved.
months. Been moved.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved the appointment of Emma Moran, teacher aide, be made permanent following successful probationary period of 6 months effective February 28th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Moved, seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved the appointment of Destiny Nieves, cafeteria monitor, be made permanent following successful probationary. Been
Second.
moved, seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved the appointment of Ediel Liza Vieira, cafeteria monitor, be made permanent following successful
So
probation.
moved.
6 months.
Second.
Move seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved the appointment of Jessica Graham, registered nurse, be made permanent following successful probationary period of 6 months, effective February 28th.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved the appointment of Frank Sticko, security attendant, be made permanent following.
So moved.
Been moved, seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved the appointment of Elizabeth Strab, teacher aide, be made permanent
So
following.
moved.
Been
Second.
moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved the appointment of Michael Camargo, behavior analyst, be made permanent following successful probationary period of 6 months, effective March 1st, 2022.
So moved. Second.
Moved, seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? 6.11, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved that Suzanne Alman be appointed home tutoring at a contractual rate for the 21-22
So
school year.
moved.
Second.
Moved, seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved that Jeannie Kuout be appointed detention monitor substitute in the elementary school at a rate of $37 per hour work for the 21-22 school year.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Yes?
No.
All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. 6.13, memorandum of agreement. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved the memorandum of agreement between the Ellenville School District and the ETSRPA teachers unit be approved as attached.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. 6.14, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be resolved the memorandum of agreement between the Ellenville Central School District and the ETSRPA teachers unit be approved as attached.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Memorandum of agreement, ECASA, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, be it resolved the memorandum of agreement between the Ellenville Central School District and ECASA, the Ellenville Central School Administrators and Supervisors Association, be revised and approved as attached.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Student IEPs. Resolve the attached list of student IEPs be acknowledged as appropriate. There are 18.
Move the list is presented. Second.
The list has been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Instruction under 8.1. Somebody want to move that?
Move it one.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. 9.1, resolved that Resolution 7.1 of July 1st, 2021, reorganizational meeting agenda be amended to read that the school district depositories be granted to Webster Bank, Catskill Hudson Bank, and M&T Bank. I believe that's because there was a change in the
moved.
banking address, correct?
Yeah. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. Under other resolutions,
Mr. President, move 10.1 to 10.4.
Second.
been moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? No one? Motion carries. So our next meeting was supposed to be March 8th. We have a very limited agenda, so in discussion with the superintendent, we will be moving that to March 15th, which will be coupled with our workshop our final workshop as well.
So no meeting March 8th, is
No.
that what you're saying?
March 15th is the next meeting. And thereafter, March 22nd. Anybody like to see anything on the next agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.
Thank you.